Greetings, greetings. My name is Troy Lamel Stovall. I humbly serve for the last 2 years as the CEO of TEDCO, Maryland's early stage technology innovation and support organization. We are here at the hotel at the University of Maryland in front of a live audience for a TEDCO Talks with, thank you, who I'll introduce in a moment, but we tape these, so this is, even though we're in front of a live audience, this is going to be shown eventually, I'm assuming, Tammy, in the fall. So people are like, why is he wearing a scarf, in August? It's the middle of August. We just came off of a heat wave. Well, as Myra and some other folks know, I just got back with our kids from Orlando. We went to Disney and to Universal. So if anybody's into Harry Potter, if you're into Harry Potter, I'm telling you, it is a pilgrimage to go to Universal. You got to go to Universal. They have recreated the 9 3/4. You disappear behind a little wall, the train ride. And so I have on, because I'm an alpha and likes black and gold, the Hufflepuff school. There we go. Somebody with me. So Myra, for folks, if you don't know, the Hufflepuff, they have each school has a trait. The sorting hat comes out and it sorts you by your trait. So here are the traits of someone that's from the Hufflepuff. And we'll see if any of these apply to yours truly. Hardworking, patience, no comment, fairness, just, loyalty, and my favorite, modesty. Now, I also, as I told you, so we went to Universal, so that's why I'm wearing the scarf. And so we also were at Disney. So some of you might remember that I have a friend that is a cousin down the river from, y'all know Tammy. Tammy about to have a heart attack over there. Cousin down the river from Black Panther. His name is Black Wildcat. And so I came with his thing, but I also got my little thing on here, Tammy, too. So this is what you got to walk around Disney with. And so I picked, what did I pick? I picked Black Panther. Well, enough about me. So let's get into this. So we're here today. We're at the TEDCO's annual investments, our first one. This is a crowded room, so thank you all for being here. But I am here with someone who is a believer, like me, a wife, mother, dog lover, mathematician, CEO, COO, ecosystem leader, hired me, and the most important adjective for me is friend. Myra Norton, CEO of Arena Analytics, is here as our guest today for TEDCO Talks.
Thank you.
So thank you, Myra.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I'm taking my kids to Disney and Universal in September. I can't say I'm looking forward to the trip, I'm going to be honest with you. So I'll have to get some. I've heard it's like a necessary rite of passage of every parent, but
One of the rides we went on, there was a 300-minute wait. I told my children, I don't love y'all that much.
Don't tell me that. I don't want to know that. I only want positive things.
So, for those that don't know, again, Myra hired me 2 years ago. At the time, she was chair of the TEDCO board. Is now probably the best job on the TEDCO board is the immediate past chair of the board. Probably the best job you have. So, Myra knows we're going to have a little bit of fun today.
All right, let's do it.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
So, speaking of vacations, favorite vacation spot that you would like to go to, either have gone to or would like to go to without the kids?
I would love to go to Hawaii. I've never been to Hawaii.
Hawaii? No. Have you been to the kids? Been there?
No, I've never been.
That is nice.
Yeah.
And without the kids is even better.
Yes. That and or New Zealand. Those are nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a long flight.
That's why the kids aren't coming.
Both long flights. So you got 2 doors. Door number 1, $10 million. All
right.
Door number 2, you can fix every mistake you ever made.
I'd definitely take the $10 million.
Oh!
Because mistakes are what make us.
Oh.
It's the times you fall down that teach you who you are And so I wouldn't want a life without mistakes.
Of course, I expect that answer from you. Although some people might pick door number 2. So let's talk about Arena for a little bit. Again, you're this math. To me, what I know of you is it's a great combination of your technical skills as a mathematician. Again, this is a mathematician, statistician, but with your passion for how to use data to correct and change the way people think about the hiring. And so I want people to understand a little bit about Arena.
Yeah. So at Arena, we believe that talent is equally distributed and opportunity isn't. And we're on a mission to fix that. And our approach to solving that problem is to use data and math and tech to help shine a light on talent where organizations and people aren't seeing it today. And so for me, this is the perfect gig, if you will. It's the perfect endeavor because my own experience being underestimated, I'll never forget when my first year of grad school in a math program, as the only woman in the math program, I was struggling. I was really having a hard time. And I had been straight A student, and I was like, I don't know what it is to struggle in an academic environment. And I went to the chair of the department and said, I need some extra help. What do I do? I'm having a hard time. And he said to me, Myra, don't be so stressed out. We all know that women aren't as talented in math as men are, and it's not your fault. And I want you to know there was no malice. He really was trying to comfort me. I mean that
was his way of comforting you. That was
I'm just saying I'm saying that the intent was positive, but I grew up in a world and could tell you lots of other stories that probably aren't appropriate for this venue of being underestimated and treated differently because I didn't match the profile that someone had in their mind of what it was to be a mathematician, a statistician, a CEO, a leader, a person in tech, you name it. So for me, it's very personal because I know what that kind of underestimation can do to you. And I was blessed to be born to 2 wonderful parents and grow up in a family that gave me support and that believed in me and that prized education and all of that. But we don't choose the families that we're born into.
Nope.
And so I was able to push through that underestimation because I had a real support system. And there are millions, literally millions of people who don't have that. And so when they get told that this isn't possible, they believe that because there isn't anyone to tell them otherwise.
Wow. Wow. I mean, serious on that. Because that gets to, I guess, another question, but I think you've already answered it, is that, because I think you just did. I wanted you to speak to a young lady who's going down this path, is in the STEM area, science, technology, engineering, and math, that is faced with that because I don't look like what they think I'm supposed to look like. I'm not, and I'm that. I'm an engineer, computer scientist, and I came up and won a lot of computer scientists that were black. And so, you're only the only woman in the room. And so the question is, Myra, what words of encouragement, maybe just did, that you can give to that young lady that's hearing this, that's seeing this, and saying, man, how can I, some point, try to trail the blaze, go down the path that Myra's going down?
Well, one, I would say go down your own path. Don't follow anyone else's. That's number one. So the thing I would say, the thing I wish, if I could go back and say this to my 16-year-old self, it would be, you are enough. Exactly as you are and who you are. You don't need to be different in any way. Because I spent a lot of my life and career thinking that I had to mold myself to fit into an environment that was asking me to mold myself to fit into that environment. And so that's number one.
Yeah.
And number two is to trust your gut, trust your instincts, trust your own wisdom. That it's why I say, when you say, what if someone wants to follow your path, I say, don't follow my path.
Yeah.
Make your own way. And you'll find that way by following what your passion is, what your wisdom leads you to. So that's what I would say.
I love it. I love it, Myra. Love it. Love it. Love. I love your spirit. I love who you are. So let's obviously talk about TEDCO. So we've been talking through the course of this that we're at 25 years. And you clearly have seen, you've been on the board, I think, since 18, 19, something like that. So you've seen a transition of leadership, a transition of what. Tell me, what TEDCO for you, what TEDCO means for the state, and a little bit of what you think, putting it on me, what do you think we're going to be doing with TEDCO over these next couple of years?
Yeah, the reason when I was asked to join the board of TEDCO, at first I was like, I don't have time to do this. I'm trying to, run a company and kids and blah, blah, blah. But the reason I joined is because the person who recruited me said, we want to build a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem in the state of Maryland. And for me, having been an entrepreneur in the ecosystem and having for many years, I'd gone to networking events and I'd met a lot of people, but I didn't find like my tribe. I didn't find the people that I could call when I'm up in the middle of the night and don't know what to do because I don't know how I'm going to make payroll next week. The people that I can call when our biggest client says they're going to have to cancel their contract and I don't know what I'm supposed to say to my investors about that. Like, I hadn't found that here. And in fact, I had connected with folks in other parts of the country just through traveling and, meeting people, and those were more the people that I called. And so the idea of being a part of an effort to actually build that here, that's what inspired me, and that's why I agreed to join the board in the first place. And I'm really proud of where the organization is today because I think we are starting to bring together the tribe.
I like that.
that we all need as entrepreneurs, and I would say investors. It's not just entrepreneurs; it's every part of the ecosystem that needs each other. This is a systems problem, and so that's why I came here, and that's what I see us doing and forging ahead in the years to come. I think even just this last year, the number of initiatives we've been able to get off the ground means more support for more diverse groups of entrepreneurs, and we need to do that times 10 in this state. The amount of innovation of science, tech that exists in this state is unparalleled. We should be leading in entrepreneurial ecosystems, and we aren't today. And so we got to fix that.
But so drill down on that. What's preventing that?
Will. I think collective will is one, and that to get to that means there's got to be a convening. You talk about stitching together the ecosystem. We have to all be pointing in the right direction. I was talking to my friend David here a week ago about this. It's like I observe this same kind of dynamic when I look at the nonprofit sector. I've been in many situations where I'll see there's 10 or 12 nonprofits working on the same problem, and they don't know about each other. Think about how inefficient that is in terms of resources, in terms of the ability to move the needle on the problem. I would argue we have that problem here in the state of Maryland when it comes to supporting entrepreneurial businesses, when it comes to growing entrepreneurship here. And so I think it's there. We have to like build that collective will. We've got to stitch together, bring together, and that requires investment.
It does.
That
Scale.
requires scale. So we need, and that means support from the state. That means support from the large anchor businesses that exist in the state. It's
so
investment.
Do you see, when we talk about this all the time, when Maryland gets ranked in these different innovation rankings, we're normally at worst top 10, most times the top 5. And the traditional ones are ahead of us, the Californias, the Massachusetts, sometimes Austin's. What you said is how do we make sure we begin to catch up to those? I mean, what you just talked about? Is there other pieces that we've got to, or what is it that we want to do? Maybe ask a question differently, Myra. Do we want to do some things differently than they've done? Because when you look at the San Francisco of the world, they've got a major inequality gap that has been created.
Yeah.
Same thing's happening. I grew up in Texas, and Austin, Texas has got a massive inequality gap that has emerged there. So do we want to go after those models, or do we want to try to do something a little different?
I think we want to do something different. I don't think we want to mimic exactly what Silicon Valley is doing, or I could talk a lot about what I think doesn't work there. But the truth of the matter is, this is Maryland. We have a different set of assets than Massachusetts or Silicon Valley, et cetera. So what we need is strategy. We need a strategy, and then we need to execute against that strategy. So this is a state that is full of assets with no strategy for how to bring those together. We need strategy. We need leadership in terms of executing that strategy.
We're hoping we're going to do that.
That's right.
We're hoping to do that. So I want to marry this with the first part of this. So, part of this, if we want to keep uplifting this, part of this is also how do we make sure that everybody participates in this? And you weren't here earlier. I asked members of the TEDCO team to stand up because I want to show the diversification that we're starting to create within the text. I think the word representation matters,
yep.
Right? So I guess my question to you is, how do we, as all those things you talk, the collective will, the scale, the stitch, all that, but how do we make sure that it's not just about that women and people of color, but also Western Maryland and Eastern Maryland? How do we make sure that the participation occurs in an equitable way?
This may be trite, and I'm sorry, but to me, it comes down to intentionality. You
Yeah,
have to be intentional about. So you have to look at how do you define diversity across all of those spectrums, and then how do you ensure that whatever we're doing, we are mirroring that level of the level of diversity that exists in the state is being mirrored in everything that we're doing. And that, to me, it's not rocket science. It takes commitment and intentionality. It takes looking at everything you do and saying, what is the representation? And the thing, this is part of what we do at Arena. One of the things I am most proud of is that when you focus, so at Arena, we focus on connecting people to jobs where they're predicted to thrive. And our hypothesis at the beginning was, if you do that, if you just focus on the outcomes that someone is likely to achieve, not what their profile is, not what their personality is, not what their pedigree is, not what their resume is, you will by default you will end up with teams of people that represent the communities in which they operate. Because if you believe that talent is equally distributed, but opportunity isn't, that is what should happen. And I'm here to tell you that is exactly what has happened. And to this question about the state, trust me, there's a tie here.
You're good.
There have now been studies that have been done nationally looking at, it's a really geeky article, so I'll just summarize for you. But this is a body of work that was done in Econometrica, which is a well-known economics journal, that looked at the growth in GDP, national GDP, from 1960 to 2010 and studied what were the drivers of that growth. Do you know that 40% of the growth in GDP in that 50-year period is a direct result of the increase in the number of women and people of color in the workforce?
There you go.
So when you talk about building an ecosystem that is representative and that is diverse across all these spectrums, you will have a wealthier state, you will have a state that produces at a higher level. There is literally no reason not to do this.
No, and look, you mentioned that study. I mean, so I went to McKinsey, and McKinsey did a study similar, but looking at publicly traded companies, and they showed that the more diverse that publicly traded company was, the higher valuation and the higher revenues that they produce. Period. And so, but it goes back to your professor, because your professor said it right. I mean, there's still this mentality that you can't be an entrepreneur, you can't be an innovator if you don't look a certain way or didn't have a certain pedigree. And so there's still that mentality. We have to be honest. Here in 2022, there's still that mentality out here. Correct?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you look at tech companies, I think it's less than 3% of tech CEOs are women.
Yep.
And smaller percentage
For
are,
blacks.
yes,
Absolutely.
exactly. So, no, we have a long, long way to go. We have a long way to go. But we shouldn't shy away from tackling the hard problems just because they're hard. So
I like that. I like that. And to that point, being more explicit about how you see the role of TEDCO in doing that.
I think TEDCO is the leader, can be the leader to help. Not, and by leader, I mean someone's got to be the, when I talk about leadership, that to me is the person that takes out the trash sometimes. That's the, leadership is about pulling together from all corners of the state, all voices, and being the convener,
Yeah. So I don't know if you saw, so we wrote an article talking about, I love the Iterata, the dogs are raised in Alaska, because there's an article about this that can teach you about leadership, because there are the lead dog, there's a lead dog, then there are the side dogs, and there are the dogs in the back, and each of them have a role in that, and understanding the role that each of them plays is the point you're making, that you don't always have to be the lead dog. And by the way, the race is so long, sometimes they have to trade out the lead dog. So sometimes you get tired, and sometimes the leader has to get swapped out, and that dog has another role to play.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I want to open it up to the floor. I went blank there. I want to open the floor. So questions from the floor. Live question. I know you didn't expect this, I know. And Tammy probably didn't either. She's probably over here fainting on me. That thud you hear was Tammy hitting the floor. Questions from the audience. Anybody? Now I got a lot of people. For those that don't know, I got a lot of people in there. Nobody. I got the board here. First, the board ain't asking no questions. Come on, folks. Don't be shy. Where are we? Oh, come on, Catherine. Oh.
I get a mic too. Wow. Might hold on to this for a little bit. Just kidding. So what do you think is the important next step that we should take then? You know, because you've got a galvanized group of people who care. So, you know, what do you think is the next good step that we could all do together even? Yeah. Intentionality is one thing you talked about.
I think, I mean, for me, you guys are kind of already in what I would say is the right next step, which is articulating a very clear strategy for the state. So you've articulated a clear strategy for TEDCO, and I think we are now in a moment where it's time to articulate how that weaves into a clear strategy for the state. And from there, the next, like what the priorities all are will fall out of that effort. But I really think there hasn't been a clear articulation of what the strategy is for the state to build an entrepreneurial ecosystem.
And to Myra's point, and for those that may not know, so at the end of this past legislative session, the legislative leadership asked TEDCO to begin thinking about that strategy for the state. And the way I articulate it is how do we create a culture of innovation? How do we ensure that there's a culture of innovation all the way down into our middle schools? And so that when they come up, it doesn't matter which part of the state or what socioeconomic group or which gender, that there's a set of resources available to that individual all along the way. And that's a journey. There's no magic wand here. But I think we have to have that articulation through a strategic, and then I love your word will, a collective will. I think that's a better way to say it. A collective will that's not just from Annapolis. It has to be from many of you in this room and those who are listening to us. It has to be public and private, and we can't keep depending on Annapolis to be the sole. I think Annapolis is a seed, but the scale comes from the private sector.
And I will just say, to maybe give a little more satisfying answer than develop a strategy, I think that the components, I think we all know that Troy just touched on this. There's an education and workforce piece here. There's a teaching people what entrepreneurship is, going back to middle school and beyond. So there's a piece there. There's a workforce development and leadership training piece. We don't have enough people in the state who are prepared to step in and run businesses. So we need to teach people how to do that. If you think about the incubators we have, we should have 10x what we have today. You know, if you think about accelerator programs, we should have 10x what we have today. We should be developing folks in the state to be able to take on I think about in my own company, I think about my senior team, and I'm constantly thinking about who on my senior team could be a CEO at a company in a couple. And we as entrepreneurs now, we should be thinking about that. That's part of what we can give to the ecosystem is growing leaders that could take on these roles over time. But it takes resources and attention to do that. And there's a big component here in terms of space and real estate and helping companies find the space they need, helping to support those first initial years when you need space. I think there's a big real estate play as well. Those are some of the things I think we
I'll add, I promise we didn't script this, but I'll add, she's right, but I'll add in some work that Ann and Balduzzi and Julie Gould are working on is, when we say the word, some of you heard me say some of this. When we say the word founder, when we say the word founder, many times we're talking about the person who physically founded the company. But I know, and many of you know, a lot of serial entrepreneurs who never founded the company. They were part of that first team. And so part of what we have to be, it's TEDCO, I believe, is intentional in creating opportunities for people to meet other people that wouldn't have been in their network initially. And so, I always pick on my friends at Hopkins, because they're a great institution. But when we find, when we fund that Hopkins entrepreneur, we need to make sure they're meeting somebody from Bowie State, from Coppin State, from Frostburg. We need to make those networks interact in a way that really does change the dynamics for the state. And that is something that we will be launching and working on soon. Other questions? Thank you for that. Over here, we got two. Oh, no. I'll let Tammy figure it out.
Hi, Myra. In this morning's Venture Talks, we talked about the issue of attracting talent. So as a tech exec, how do you go about ensuring that you attract the best talent for your company?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I will say for me, diversity is really important. So when I am recruiting for an executive, like the way I see a lot of folks in this space do it is they leverage their networks, they leverage their investors' networks. The problem is if your networks and your investors' networks are homogeneous, then you end up with a team that is not diverse.
Amen.
And so for me, every time we do a search, we're looking at what are, again, we're doing a broad national search. I would love to find people here in Baltimore. But I'm going to prioritize diversity over location. And when I talk about diversity, I mean that across multiple spectrums. I want people that think differently, as well as I want folks that represent, the communities that we serve. So for us, it's always a national search, and it's always done with intentionality, thinking about what are the voices that are currently missing around this senior team that we need to bring? Again, whether that's some set of experience or background, or it's, a life experience that we want to recruit for. And then, we have an entire process where we kind of run through that. I say that to say, because a lot of my fellow CEOs that are running, venture-backed tech companies tend to, and I know time is of the essence and you need that person right away, but the problem is when you let time get in the way of getting it right, then you will end up with a homogeneous team that actually isn't bringing the best to it. And so for me, it's worth the investment and it's worth the pain of not having someone for a couple of months because I've seen the impact of getting the right person on board.
Because the long term, back to both of the studies, the long term impact on the business.
Yeah.
And to me, to your point, and Bill, I think we got to make tell me there's a bunch of entrepreneurs in this audience here. Which of you, for your sales and marketing team, would hire one person to run sales and marketing? Who would do that? But that's what we do for DEI. Mm-hmm. We hire one person for DEI efforts and say, go take care of it. And so my point is, until DEI becomes as important to all of us as your P&L, as your revenue, as EBITDA, until it becomes that part of the conversation, it's a project. As long as it's a project, it can get cut. But if it's foundation to your business and it generates real value, then you'll keep on investing in it. Next question.
Thanks. Hey, Troy, it's Chris Frew with BioBuzz.
Yes?
Good to see you.
Good seeing you, buddy.
So I wanted to see if you guys could talk about industry's involvement in growing our ecosystem a little bit more, because I think when I look at Silicon Valley, you look at Boston, New York, there's a much larger volume of larger commercial successful companies. And I just wonder, I mean, you look around the room, we see a lot of entrepreneurs in the room, but maybe not many Fortune 500 executives or venture, arms of those companies. So what do you think in Baltimore and in Maryland, across Maryland, that the public sector and the industry can do to better connect the ecosystem and foster what we're all trying to create?
I'll just say industry's got to get more involved and double down here. And there are a number of leaders of some of our anchor organizations that I know are starting to recognize this and want to figure out how to do it. So I'm really happy to see that. Because the only way we're going to have more big companies here is if we create this thriving ecosystem. Because what do big companies care about? Well, they also care about workforce and what's the talent base and and real estate and all of those things. But I think we won't be successful if we don't wrap our arms around every single large business that across the state and have this be part of that is one key stakeholder in the ecosystem that has to be part of co-creating these solutions with us. We can't just prescribe to them. I was saying to someone earlier today that someone asked me what the state could do to help entrepreneurs, and I said one of the most important things the state can do is help, like the ecosystem could do, help entrepreneurs get their first customer. So all these big companies that are across the state should be doing business with the entrepreneurial ventures that are being grown here. And in order to make that happen, we've got to, again, stitch together this ecosystem so that, because when I talk to, the CEOs of the large companies that are here, there is a desire to do this, but I don't quite know how. Yep. And so we have got to make that pipeline visible to them, and we've got to have them be part of co-creating the process so that they have skin in the game in terms of what successable outcomes look like.
So, Chris, thanks for being here, and I appreciate you being on. I just want to maybe a little fan mail on what I'm about to say. But, one of the strengths of Maryland is connective tissue to the federal government and the number of federal labs that we have here. And that's been a huge strength, but it's also a little bit of a weakness because we haven't exploited it to the same degrees that other parts have. But also it's made us over-reliant on that mentality of the reliance on that form of, and so we've got to break that cycle of, to maintain that, but then but doing a better job of getting with the bio types of companies, and getting with the cyber companies, and getting themselves to see themselves as an ecosystem themselves, not as individual companies, and not being reliant, as we've been so on the federal, and that the scale only comes from the corporate side investing in itself and us, and not relying on the state or the federals to do that. And I think that's the mind shift I want us to help lead that type of a mind shift. Over here.
Hello? Okay,
Yes,
there we
there you
go.
go.
Much better. Hi, my name is Sean Sutherland. I'm with Capauza. What I see within the ecosystem, you have a lot of great organizations, but there's a lot of siloness, a lot of, kind of sites that are just kind of staying within their own lane, and we're not really seeing what the left hand is doing when the right hand's doing something. What could TEDCO's role be in playing and being a uniter and promoting collaboration across the different ecosystem channels?
So Myra's been kind of mentioning that all along, this notion of stitching, and that's part of the strategic plan that you can find on the website. And I'll use an example. I'm sitting here looking at this table with my friend Mike Tilkey and Stephen Alville, and there are 30-some incubators, accelerators across the state of Maryland, and they all operate, as you just said, they all operate independently. And so part of what the effort that Stephen is leading, working with Mike and a few others, is how do we create a network of those incubators? So it's not about shutting any of them down. It's about how do we get them all to operate more as a network so that regardless of what part of the state you're in, you know that there's a certain quality of incubator that's going to be there with data that's shared across so that you can move across. So if you need access to a 3D printer that doesn't happen to be there, we know exactly where one is. If you need access to something, we know exactly where that is. And so there is a need to recreate resources where it only might need to be used once. Why recreate a resource that only needs to be used once when it might be being used 10 times somewhere else? And so, look, I think many of you heard me say this. I grew up in Texas. The whole state of Maryland could fit in a Western county. It takes me a day and a half to cross the state of Texas. I can get across the state of Maryland in a couple of hours, in a good day. So we got to take advantage of our geographical size and but our density is something we've allowed our silos to be the dominant conversation as opposed to how do we think about ourselves as a network. So that'd be my answer. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I've seen the power of this in small. I'll give you an example of something that I just took advantage of. So, and this actually ties into the DE&I conversation you were talking about because, I had on my team a young data scientist who was super talented and decided though that she didn't want to do data science anymore, that she wanted a product role. Okay, and our instinct is she's a great young woman, talented. We want to keep her, right? But I looked at that and said, we don't have the product mentorship bandwidth to take someone who has no product experience and move them into a role just because they want that role, right? I'm going to set her up for failure if I do that. And nobody's going to win. So I reached out to, Sherrod's here somewhere, to Baltimore Tracks. So this is one of the groups that's been put together to say, I have a young woman, she's a data scientist. I reached out to a couple of my fellow CEOs. I've got someone that's super talented that, wants a role like this. We don't have it here. And I've got a bunch of people, came together to say, oh yeah, well, yeah, send her over here. We've got this role and we have a program to train people and that's that simple little thing needs to be enabled at scale. Because when you talk about talent, this is how you take the talent you have, grow it here in Baltimore, but you have to think differently. You can't think about these are my people and I need to keep them here. You have to think about how you move as the business moves and as people grow and you do the right thing by people and by the ecosystem. We have all of the ingredients right here to stop the silos, to come together. We just need to do it. We need to do it.
And back to leadership, that doesn't mean that everyone has to always lead. Sometimes you have to be part of the team.
That's right.
You have to be part of the dog team that's leading and be willing to follow the rest of it.
And that's where when you have collective will around a shared vision, then you can put aside your own, I don't want to lose this young woman. I really don't. But you have to look at the reality and say, this is what's best for her. And at the end of the day, it's going to be what's best for the company because, that's what we have to do as an ecosystem.
Couldn't agree more. Anything else? Any other questions? Got one right up here up front. This is going to be a tough one from her.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Pringle. I'm with the Baltimore Business Journal. This question could be for both of you, Myra and Tori. As you look at how we're positioned, the state is in this ecosystem, tell me what our differentiator is, and then also what role could DEI play in this?
I actually think that one of our key differentiators is the diversity of both the state, not just Baltimore City, but we have diversity in terms of population, in terms of the types of tech that we are developing here that I think people don't even realize. I mean, I just met an entrepreneur on the Eastern Shore that has a patent on this incredible technology, and it's tech. This is like it's software engineering clean oysters
Yeah.
at about $1 million per hour or something like that. It's
exactly.
crazy.
Yeah.
Nobody even knows about this. We have this and of course we have life sciences, and we have biotech, and we have B2B tech. We've got consumer tech. We have incredible diversity. I think that's one of the strengths here, in a grounded place. So this is going to be controversial, and I'm sorry, but when I look at Silicon Valley, I don't see that as a grounded place.
Oh, I agree. That's true.
This is a place that is grounded in real world problems that we face every day, and entrepreneurs are starting businesses to solve those problems. And I think that that's something that we should capitalize on here.
I think two parts to that, Rhonda. I mean, I agree with Myra. 2 parts. One is, this may sound a little crazy, but being behind those other places puts us at an advantage to look at them and learn what we don't want to be, and learn to be what we want to be, which also then gets to be, when we talk about those other places, we're talking about regions. We're talking about the Silicon Valley, which is a region of Northern California. We're talking about Austin, Texas, which is an area there in Central Texas. We're talking about the Boston area. This is the only place we're talking about a state.
Yeah.
This is the only one. I'm telling you, we've been looking at this. This is the only one where we're talking about a state. So that is an amazing advantage over all those other ones.
And, sorry, the opportunity there is to become a model for what it looks like for a state to tackle this, and for it not to just be centered around an urban area, you know, or right, but like how you do this at the state level. I think
that's where I really do get excited. That's why for a state, and again, our smallness allows us, that smallness is our advantage. This geographic smallness, the population smallness, but the density gives us that advantage. And the diversity of that is all those advantages that we've got to find a way. We, TEDCO, and all of you in this room and all of you listening, we've got to figure that out. We need your help talking about that. So thank you for the question. So, thank you.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you. Thank you all. Appreciate you. I started out giving you a couple of adjectives. Hope I probably missed a few, I'm sure, in there, here or there. But I ended it with friend, and I mean that, Myra. You know how much you mean to me, how much you've done for me personally, how much you've done for TEDCO over these years. So for that, here is a small token of appreciation.
All right. Let's see.
Again, this is Troy Lamel-Stovall, the CEO of TEDCO. Thank you all. Be safe, be sane, be healthy, be blessed. Take care. Till next time.
Thank you.